The battle against the climate crisis unites an unlikely team, China and Taiwan.
India's rivalry with China has brought risks as well as opportunities for Taiwan. We meet the Taiwanese teachers who are feeling the effects.
The fight for freedom online. Taiwanese digital activists ready the country for digital warfare. Plus,
what does it take to host one of the biggest celebrations in the country? I asked the students training for the occasion.
Welcome to National Day Ceremony!
A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Ian Kavat. Academics from Taiwan and China are meeting for their annual Cross-Strait Forum on climate change and renewable energy. But some topics remain off the agenda. Sally Jensen has the story.
Taiwan and China's political relationship has not always been smooth, but one area where the two countries can set aside their differences and work together is humanity's biggest challenge, the climate crisis. With Chinese participants dialing in via video link, experts from both sides of the strait are holding their annual forum at National Taiwan Ocean University to discuss developing renewable energy.
我们集合两岸有关气候变迁与这个永续能源、可持续能源这方面专家学者可以讲是最顶尖、最好的一个开会的一个会议了。
尽管两岸的形势持续复杂多变，这个大家有目共睹。在海峡两岸的科技文化交流史上也是少见的。
Taiwan and China are both highly industrialized countries. China is the world's biggest emitter of carbon dioxide, while Taiwan is one of Asia's biggest per capita emitters. In line with international climate agreements, they have set net zero emissions targets, with Taiwan aiming for 2050 and China for 2060. They are also key manufacturing hubs, with China dominating global production of solar and wind power equipment. Taiwan supplies much of the advanced semiconductors used in much of the world's tech, including renewable power units. Other countries are reliant on both for components essential to the energy transition. But some are trying to reduce their reliance on China, citing economic and energy security concerns.
We seek to responsibly manage the competition between our countries so it does not tip into conflict. I've said we are for de-risking, not decoupling with China.
China has aggressively rolled out renewable energy domestically, often at the expense of rural communities. In Taiwan, where space is at a premium, the transition to renewables has led to land disputes and protests, and the government has faced pushback on its net zero plans from environmental groups. But NGOs and civil society are not participating in this day-long climate forum, which is focused firmly on the scientific and technological aspects of renewable expansion.
Taiwan and China are putting aside their political differences to try to reduce their environmental impact on the planet. But without politics, human rights and climate justice issues also on the agenda of their Cross-Strait Forum, many will wonder how lasting change can be. Eason Chen and Sally Jensen in Geelong City for TaiwanPlus.
The Pingtung government says it will fine the owners of a factory that exploded $75,000 for violating safety rules. At least 9 people were killed and over 100 injured by the blast. The government found the factory stored 30 times the allowed amount of flammable chemicals. Officials also say managers gave firefighters incomplete information about what was stored on site and failed to offer help to the fire commander. It's believed that no one called the fire department until around 20 minutes after the fire began, and at least one survivor says workers were not told to evacuate.
我所属的位置离那个爆炸点比较远一点，我们想要逃，可是没有接到指令。现场有其他的干部在啊，叫你们做法，都没有。
Chinese officials have warned the Philippines not to make provocations or seek trouble after a floating barrier in the South China Sea was removed. Beijing had placed a 300-meter barrier around the disputed Scarborough Shoal. Video from the Philippine Coast Guard shows its personnel severing the barrier. Chinese vessels removed the remnants shortly after, and interactions remained peaceful. Manila had accused Beijing of placing the barrier to prevent Philippine fishing boats from accessing the area. Philippine officials condemned the installation as a violation of international law. Taiwan's military has named the first woman chief of its Political Warfare Bureau. Lieutenant General Chen Yuling now heads the Army's Political Warfare Department. That office focuses on countering Chinese influence and psychological warfare operations. Chen will take over her new role after the current chief steps down on Sunday. Taiwan's first female two-star general, Chen, has broken the glass ceiling on several positions in the country's military. Taiwan's National Day celebrations are right around the corner. Our reporter Joyce Tseng went to meet the students who've been training to receive some of the event's most important guests.
Big smiles from the college students who've been selected as Taiwan's National Day ceremonial ushers. It's a role not many in the country get to say they've done.
I feel very honored and very happy that I can have the qualification to serve the guest.
These 12 students from National Taipei University will join those selected from other schools and work the floor during the day's massive celebrations. The main event at the presidential office shuts down nearby streets to hold parades and performances which draw large crowds.
Now, on the day, these students will be stationed on stage and spread out around the presidential office grounds to receive guests. And to become one of these ushers is a very selective process and one that resembles a pageant.
You have to walk gracefully, sit, and smile through long stretches of time. And on the day itself, this all has to be done under the heat of the sun. But the students have been training hard for this, from doing leg strengthening exercises to perfecting their smiles with a popsicle stick.
I think it's whole year time to training this for National Day ceremony.
It's a competitive gig, and special talents may help students land the job. But arguably, the most advantageous skill is knowing a foreign language, as the ushers will have to receive many international guests on the big day.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to National Day ceremony.
法语 Bonjour, bienvenue à la cérémonie de la Fête nationale. 日语
Konnichiwa.
The students are also trained to deal with emergencies, like crowd control and administering CPR.
If you need any assistance, please let me know.
With not long to go until Taiwan's National Day on October 10th, these ushers are geared up and ready to welcome those celebrating with style and a smile. John Su and Joyce Tseng for TaiwanPlus.
A local NGO is working to enhance the country's civil resilience to online warfare, and it's looking to Ukraine to find the best way to do so. Rick Glowett has the story.
A cyber defense guide in case of war. That's what these digital activists in Taiwan have put together. They want to show the public how to use the internet to help their country if it comes under attack. From battling misinformation with AI to building apps that direct people to safety, it's based on lessons learned from Ukraine's battle against Russia's invasion.
If the war really happened, 90% of the people will not be at the front line. So what can we do if we are not at the front line? The thing we can do, the easiest thing we can do is that using internet to spread the right information or try to produce useful information for other people.
Like Ukraine, Taiwan also has a belligerent authoritarian neighbour, China, which claims sovereignty over the self-ruled island nation, increasingly threatening to take it by force. And China is also using tactics used by Russia, such as cyber attacks on critical infrastructure and misinformation campaigns to sow discord.
One thing we learned in Ukraine is that everyone who touches a computer system plays a role in the cyber defense of Ukraine. If you're touching a computer, you are in many cases seen as a target of attack. And I think that would be true in Taiwan also during an invasion.
The handbook's publishers urged Taiwanese to consider the role they would play in the country's cyber defense by presenting examples of Ukrainians using their digital skills to counter coercion, whether as citizen journalists gathering evidence or educators building media literacy to help spot fake news.
You can learn the cases by different scenarios. We divided the war scenarios into 3 kinds, and each scenarios we provide case studies to tell you how to react when you get into this kind of situation.
Russia's invasion of Ukraine has brought the world's attention to the role of cyber warfare in a 21st century conflict. As Taiwan faces up to a similar threat, these activists hope their new handbook will help fellow Taiwanese defend their country online as well as offline. Patrick Chen and Rick Lowett for TaiwanPlus.
Competition is heating up 3 days into the 19th Asian Games in Hangzhou, China. Rosie Greninger reports.
The excitement of the Asian Games in Hangzhou is in full swing as athletes from across Asia battle for the top spot. Taiwan claimed bronze in the men's table tennis for the 3rd consecutive games. The Taiwanese team collected the 3rd place medal after losing out to China in the semi-finals. It came after stunning victories in judo, the nation bagging gold in both the women's and men's competitions. India blew away crowds, claiming the first world record of the games and securing a gold medal in the men's 10-metre air rifle event with a score of 1,893.7 points. The country also took home gold in women's cricket.
But I think this is one of the biggest achievements for us as a team and as an entire nation, because first time cricket is a part of the Asian Games, and just to get the gold for the nation and to add to the medals of the nation, I think that's no bigger pride than that.
Host nation China continued their pool domination on Monday, taking home 4 gold medals in the men's 100-metre breaststroke, women's 200-metre individual medley, and the men and women's 50-metre backstroke. The Chinese women's gymnastics team also secured gold. The latest results leave Taiwan, competing under the name Chinese Taipei, sitting in the 8th spot on the leaderboard with 2 gold medals, while host nation China sits comfortably at the top with 45 gold medals. Events to look out for in the day ahead. Taiwan will compete in basketball and boxing preliminaries, as well as in esports. James Lin and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
Stay with us here on TaiwanPlus. Still ahead, meet the handful of experts who spend their days cataloguing Taiwan's moss species.
For more stories from here in Taiwan and around the world, download the TaiwanPlus app.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. The chair of the Hong Kong Journalist Association has been sentenced to 5 days in jail. Ronson Chan was charged with obstructing a police officer after he allegedly refused to show his identity card to a plainclothes officer. Chan has been granted bail pending an appeal. He hopes that his case will create awareness about declining press freedoms in Hong Kong. Several media outlets were forced to shut down after crackdowns in 2019.
But I hope that every journalist of us still have to stand firm for our job, for our duty, and we are still trying to cover the truth and the news story for the Hong Kong and the world.
For more about Ronson Chan's sentencing, our reporter Rhys Ayers spoke to Iris Xu, the China representative of the Committee to Protect Journalists.
Can you tell me why Ronson Chan was arrested? Was there a reason to believe that he was targeted?
Sure. So Ronson was arrested in September 2022 for while he was covering a residential meeting in Mongkok, I believe. And we suspect that he was targeted because of his role as Hong Kong Journalists Association's chairman, but we cannot be sure.
What is the state of press freedom in Hong Kong at the moment?
I think press freedom in Hong Kong right now is very bleak, and because what we saw from yesterday's sentencing of Hong Kong Journalists Association's chairperson, Ronson, that the justice system is obviously being used by authorities to intimidate reporters in the city. And the sentencing also provides grounds for, say, the police officers to harass or obstruct reporters who are simply doing their jobs, reporting on what's happening in the society.
Do you think there'll be a significant response from the international community regarding Chan's arrest?
I hope so, because this is very humiliating to all the reporters for, basically saying, oh, now police can get away with harassing journalists while they are doing their jobs, and that punishing journalists for their encounters with police are okay.
That was Iris Xu from the Committee to Protect Journalists, speaking to reporter Rhys Ayers. India's border tensions with China have allowed Taiwan to take over as India's main partner for learning Mandarin. But Beijing's messy withdrawal has created problems Taipei is struggling to solve. Stash Butler reports.
Cutting Chinese characters from paper in his New Delhi classroom, Agastya Bose is learning Mandarin the hands-on way. Study of the language in India has suffered ever since border tensions with China boiled over 3 years ago. But with help from his Taiwanese teacher and the app Duolingo, Agastya says he's found a passion.
I picked up a little from Duolingo and I really enjoyed it, but then Duolingo crashed and I couldn't use it for some reason, so I decided to learn Chinese as third language. I enjoy it a lot.
Agastya's school is at the centre of a countrywide transition. As Chinese companies and learning institutes have pulled out of India, Taiwan has moved in, offering teachers and resources to schools like this one. Facing diplomatic isolation because of China's claim over its territory, Taiwan is using soft power tactics like these to build ties with a global power. About 65 students at Bluebell's School International learn Mandarin either through textbook or hands-on activities. They're one of only 2 schools in New Delhi to be taught by a native Mandarin speaker from Taiwan. That number does not include private teachers from Taiwan, like Nancy Xiao, who runs the Meiyu Chinese Language Center in the north of Delhi. China's withdrawal has allowed her to start using Taiwanese textbooks and offer Taiwan-certified tests. But with fewer companies in India looking for Mandarin ability, demand for her lessons has collapsed.
Now it's like online, offline together will be like 50 or 60 students now. It's pretty less, like 3 times lesser than before the offline, before the pandemic.
At Bluebell's, students face a different challenge. India has dropped Mandarin from the secondary school national curriculum, meaning students here won't get a qualification when they graduate, a concern for Taiwanese firms which rely on locals fluent in Mandarin to do business.
Without this in between, it's very hard for our people to come to India in large numbers.
It's a sign of the mixed opportunities India's tensions with China have brought. Taiwan has seized the opening to fund Mandarin teaching and build cultural ties. But Beijing's withdrawal has disrupted learning for all students, both in public schools and private, and Taiwan faces a tough task putting together the pieces for its language and trade to thrive. Leon Lien, Siobhan Powell and Stash Butler in New Delhi for TaiwanPlus.
The US has established diplomatic ties with 2 Pacific Island nations. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken signed agreements with Niue and the Cook Islands during a 2-day US Pacific Islands Forum being hosted in Washington. President Joe Biden also announced $10 million in new infrastructure funding for its Pacific Island partners. This comes as the US seeks to shore up ties with Indo-Pacific countries as a way to counter growing Chinese influence in the region. At the forum, Blinken stressed the historical connections between the US and Pacific Islands.
President Biden today, with all of our colleagues from the Pacific Island nations, emphasized this fundamental fact. The United States is a Pacific nation with millions of citizens of Pacific heritage.
Has Chinese tech giant Huawei really found a loophole around US sanctions? That answer is still not entirely clear after the company released its latest product. Joyce Tseng explains why.
A first look at a new line of smart products by Chinese tech giant Huawei. But arguably the most highly anticipated reveal was missing. The company's launch event drew millions of viewers online, but Huawei made no mention of its mysterious homegrown chip that the tech world has been buzzing about.
Because this is a very quite sensitive topic, because Huawei is still facing, U.S. sanctions now. If they disclose too much technology details, it might bring in troubles for some Huawei partners in China.
The chip in question is the one that appeared in Huawei's latest smartphone, the Mate 60 Pro, which was quietly launched last month. Reverse engineering analysis done by world-leading semiconductor researcher Tech Insights confirmed that the chip is the most advanced one it's documented that was made in China.
All our findings confirmed almost all components used in Mate 60 Pro are designed and manufactured in China.
Though the 7-nanometer chip is not the most advanced chip on the market, it is competitive. Some who've used the phone say the Chinese-made chip is capable of 5G speeds, a technological feat suggesting Huawei has somehow overcome U.S. sanctions that's aimed to cut Beijing off from advanced chip-making tools.
我感觉还是国产芯片比较好。国产的好，安全性。安全。华为被这个美国制裁了之后，这个就代表一个非常重要的意义，就是即使再恶意的制裁，也无法影响人类的科技发展。
Washington has been vying for tech supremacy and has deemed advanced chips, the brains that power everything from consumer electronics to weapon systems, a matter of national security. That's why it has blacklisted Huawei and rolled out a host of restrictions via the country's CHIPS Act, all to keep Beijing's tech capabilities at bay, a strategy that may now need to be rethought.
The effect of any sanctions so far will be limited now.
Despite Huawei's comeback, analysts say this does not mean consumers in China will immediately switch over. China is the largest iPhone market in the world, and Apple's latest iPhone 15 is likely to benefit from brand loyalty.
The majority of iPhone users would gonna stick with iOS system. They would not easily switch to Huawei.
With Washington and Beijing's tech competition playing out in both policy and the market, the latest smartphones have added pressure to both sides to come up with their next move. Howard Zhang and Joyce Tseng for TaiwanPlus.
There are over 1,000 types of moss in Taiwan. That's a richness of species on par with bigger countries. But only a handful of experts are cataloguing and studying these tiny plants. John Van Trieste brings us a look into their world.
Taiwan's wild places vary from tropical lowlands to high mountains, but there's one thing that unites these landscapes: moss. The country has around 1,500 of the world's 23,000 varieties. Yao Kuiyu is one of 5 experts here who make their living studying these species. He's trekked all over the island taking samples, and he's still fascinated by these ancient, highly adaptable plants. They're an important part of every ecosystem they're found in, retaining water, cleaning the air, and serving as nurseries for other plants.
圆锥形的苔藓它会吸收水分，对这个森林水汽的保持是很重要。某一些物种会把那个细鳞藓啊，它会背在背上，细鳞藓有味道，它可以就是躲避它的捕食者。像一些昆虫，它会躲在那个悬垂型的苔藓里面。 那个鸟就啄不到它。
And especially when looked at closely under a magnifying glass, they present a world of shapes and colors. It's this side of moss that's led biology teacher Yang Yufeng to spend the past decade traveling the country in search of specimens. She's taken thousands of photos and shared them with fellow moss enthusiasts online.
苔藓也不只是绿色而已，甚至也有一些苔藓呢会呈现银白色，然后也有一些是呈现橘红色或者是紫色这样的一个色泽，其实是比大家想象的还要来得缤纷。那甚至在微观的世界里面，每一种苔藓都有很特殊的地方。
Yang's fellow moss fans have begun cultivating their own moss at home and sharing tips for creating artistic arrangements. But as appreciation for moss spreads, so do fears about conservation.
发现很多大众喜欢的那个景观品，里面放的苔藓其实是中高海拔的苔藓。如果我们是带到平地来去培养的话，其实养不活。那另外呢，也会直接或间接造成山上苔藓株被盗采的这个情况。
These moss species have survived for millennia, but even this tiny subset of life on Earth isn't immune to human activities. Experts like Yao and Yang will continue their surveying and cataloging, and keeping an eye on moss well into the future. Devin Tsai and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Remember to download the TaiwanPlus app for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally today, we'll leave you with images of a 150-million-year-old Camptosaurus skeleton being displayed on the streets of Paris. I'm Ian Kavat. Take care and see you next time.